We're talking to Natalie today, and we're going to be talking about her about UFOs and her research um, on UFOs because of her experiences. And Natalie, you had uh, said that you had started researching UFOs in the year 2000 because of some of your experiences. Could you elaborate on that a little bit, please?
Well, in the early 2000s, I woke up during an abduction. Um, I wasn't in my bed, and this happened 3 times during one night. And the next morning, it really frightened me because I had been awake long enough each time to know that this was real. uh, I'm not at home in my bed like I should be. And something about it just really got to me. I know that in the 90s, I had had a lot of weird experiences, and uh, I I saw a UFO out our bedroom window, and I woke up my husband and I said, "They're here, they're here." And then I looked back and it was just the moon. And I felt ridiculous because I didn't believe in UFO anything, I thought that was a silly subject.
Well, when you when you woke up in year 2000, you woke up those 3 times. Were you able to see the aliens or see who the abductors were?
No, I didn't see a face. But each time I woke up, I got a good look at my surroundings. Um, one of the times it was a very unusual looking place. Um, I couldn't tell where the light was coming from. I was on a table. I could hear activity around me, but I couldn't see, I couldn't move my head, but I could hear it and I couldn't see it. And it was frustrating. Um, and then I was out. And then I woke up again and I was being carried. I was being carried down a long hallway. Um, and I felt completely incapacitated. I was wide awake, but I felt like my body had been drugged. I was perfectly lucid,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
could not move. I felt heavy. Um, I really thought, you know, oh my gosh, you know, they've drugged me, whoever's taken me. I mean, it was very frightening. And I felt like several people were holding me, but I could not move my head to look. It was almost like the effort to move my eyes was difficult, but I could see. And it just scared me to death because when I woke up in the morning, everything's fine. And those 3 separate times, I didn't see an alien's face, thank goodness, because I don't know what I would have done. I was thinking that humans had taken me, you know, um, but that made no sense. The next morning, everything's fine. Um, I didn't notice any marks on my body or anything, but I had just been through an ordeal just a few years before where we had caught a stalker. So the first thing on my mind was, well, I know I wasn't at home. And, maybe this guy got out. Or, I didn't know what to think except that I was terrified. Um, but I didn't know how to really voice that to anybody. I just thought, something's going on. And as I was trying to think, well, what could it be? Well, it was something unusual, was something that doesn't happen, you know, uh, something about it just scared the hell out of me.
Right.
And the only thing I could think of was, well, that sounds like abduction of some kind. Um, and then I got to thinking, I just went through some weird stuff when I right before I moved to where I live now. And I couldn't make sense of it then, but there was a lot of my son had seen a UFO. I saw a UFO. Um, we had a lot of paranormal type activity around the house. Um, and I just pushed it aside and ignored it. And then we caught this guy that was stalking me. And so I immediately moved. I forgot all about the alien stuff. But when I was, that next morning after I woke up and I wasn't at home, and then I got home and everything was fine, I thought, you know what? I think this has something to do with that. And I've never been able to allow myself to think that that could be real, but that was real. Um, I know it happened. And so I just started looking into it. Um, and I remembered that Whitley Strieber had written a book about it. I didn't even know his name, but I remembered the name of the movie. And I thought, well, it said that that was a true story. That's what I heard. So I'm just going to read that book. Maybe I can see what's this is about. I really didn't even know where to look, you know. Um, so I went to the bookstore, I got the book, and I just couldn't believe, because it was more than flying saucers, it was all this other stuff. Um, and it was like reading about my life from when I was little, the weird dreams that seemed real. Um,
Now, do you still have
and
dreams now?
yeah,
Okay. When
what?
do you still have those same dreams now? Weird dreams.
Yes, I still have a lot of contact seems to happen in a dream state where you think you're dreaming. Um, I had an experience in was it August, and I woke up and I felt like I was in a dream state, but I was awake. Um, and there was an alien in my face, um, and I have done enough research and just going over my own experiences enough to realize that a lot of things do happen in my dreams that weren't dreams. Um, and I realized that this was an imposed dream state. And so my first reaction was fear, because somebody's imposing a different mindset on me, and you can feel it. It's very strong. And I just determined that I was not going to give into that fear anymore, that I was going to push through it. And so instead of listening to my mind, oh, you're dreaming, this is just a dream, I forced myself to push my hand out towards the being and make contact with it, touch it. And as I'm doing it, I said, I am not afraid. I was saying that for me and for them, and I'm not afraid, and friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I just forced my hand out. And it wasn't easy, it was very, very hard, but I did it. And the response I got was, you could, a lot of times with them, they don't say words. It's rare that they'll speak a sentence, but it's like a telepathic thing where you can literally, that's how they talk to you, it's a feeling, it's, something like that. And the reaction was surprise, like, because, that's off the routine, you're supposed to just play along and think you're dreaming and just go with whatever happens in this dream. And the response was surprise, and then coming back and taking my hand. And we got up and we went to do whatever we were going to do. I saw other abductees there. And I was trying to figure out where we were, because we didn't stay in the house. We went, I don't know how they do that, but we were in another building, and there was several people there. several.
Was it a building or was it a ship? Was it round or square?
No, this was a building like on Earth. I mean, it was a regular building, like a. I got the sense it was like at a hotel or a conference place. You
When
know,
when you were felt like that you were drugged, was it like more like a sleep paralysis?
you mean in the 2000s that drugged or the dream state?
Yeah, and when you felt like you were being carried, was that like sleep paralysis? Because are you having difficulty hearing me?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, am I not speaking up loud enough, or would it help if I let me see if I use a headset? Is that better?
No, I'll manage
Okay,
because I've got my volume all the way up.
okay. Um, I know of other people who have had sleep paralysis who have experienced some of the same things that you've experienced, and so
Well,
yeah,
when I've had sleep paralysis, it was different than that one drug state that in the 2000s. I literally felt drugged, like my body was it wasn't paralyzed. I just couldn't move a muscle. And when I've been in sleep paralysis, you simply just cannot move, at least for me. And it's like an all over state.
okay.
Um,
I'm trying to turn up the volume on the output level up to see. Oh, I've already got it up as high as I can get it. Okay. Maybe I just need to bring it down a little further.
oh, that's better. Yeah,
Okay.
that's much better.
Yeah. There we go. How's that?
That's good.
Okay.
That
Okay. Let's talk some about the experience that you're having now. All right.
okay.
Tell me about those experiences.
Well, um, the let's see, my the last 2 years have been real active. Um, my son is also involved. Sometimes he's there. We're there together, um, and we see a lot of UFOs together, like a ridiculous amount. Um, and I noticed that in in 2019 we were seeing a lot of stuff. Um, and let's see, September of 2019, um, we saw I saw a daytime ship from my patio, and um, that week was real active. And I had an abduction one morning while I was out in my yard, and I don't. The way this one happened was different, in that I heard them. I heard someone running up behind me, and they tapped me right here, right right at the base of my neck and the top of my back, and I just went down. I knocked over a garden stake that was in the yard, one of those glass globe things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my son was inside the house, and I heard this somebody running up behind me, and then I got tapped right here. I went down like a sack of potatoes, and it was like they just shut me down. uh, you know I was going out, and I couldn't. I started to say my son's name, to, for help. I started to say his name and I couldn't even finish it. And I was out and I was on the ground. And I watched this being run into the house. And that was different. A lot of times it'll be, you'll get woken up from sleep.
Right.
You're in bed and they're at your bed. But this was different. So that happened. And they must have got me back into bed because this was early in the morning. And I had taken the dog out. And that's when they tagged me in the yard. And then I watched this being run in the house. And when I came to, I was in my bed and I thought the day was starting. It was like a repeat of the morning. And I felt like something was wrong, like, because I'd already gotten up, but they had put me back in bed after this happened. And I didn't realize, what had happened until when I went outside and my garden stake is knocked over and there was no way it should have fallen over.
Mm-hmm.
I was bruised. Um, and then that night, as soon as I laid down and got relaxed, I just had recall, it came back. And it was really, I don't remember seeing my son there, but we were somewhere, felt like in the area, in the country. We were outside. Um, and it was a ceremony of some kind, which was unusual. And they had, I'd never seen, I don't know what to call these beings that were in this ceremony. They looked like horses, but they were people. They had horse heads. And I thought, well, this is just bizarre,
Yeah.
There were several other abductees there, and it was like we had been taken there to witness them being released. They were prisoners, and they were wearing prisoner uniforms, and they were shackled. And it
Now,
seemed like we were at a courthouse or something.
now, were you
But
shackled?
no,
But
no,
were you a
I
prisoner?
wasn't shackled. I was standing in the audience when I became aware back, and I got the distinct impression that I needed to remain calm or I'd be put back out.
Okay.
I just got that very strong impression from the beings that were with me that I needed to remain calm if I wanted to participate and, be aware.
So these were not benevolent beings, is that correct?
Well, they weren't, they were kind of indifferent, but they gave me the impression that I could remain awake if I just remained calm. That maybe that like the if I didn't freak out by what these inhuman looking beings were, because they look like they had fur. They look like yeah, they were covered like in horse hair. They looked like horses, but they had 2 arms and 2 legs. Like their head was a horse.
Yeah. That sounds similar to what Charles Hall described in his book, Millennium Hospitality. Um, but I don't think they actually had a horse head. It's just there's a lot of people that were freaked out in the desert where he was located at when he was doing his work. And uh, people who were the weathermen, military weathermen, uh, were freaked out badly by these guys. And Charles Hall was apparently the only one that was able to go out there and work because he had gotten used to them, or they didn't bother him, or something. Uh, doesn't mean that he wasn't scared. And but that's what it sounds like to me. And I'm just telling you something I've read.
Yeah, I think if they hadn't given me the impression telepathically that if they hadn't, because I felt like something must be something major going on if they're giving me the impression that I have to remain calm,
Yeah,
not to freak out. That was the sense of it. Because when I saw those two prisoners that were not human, it was a shock.
yeah.
I was stunned, and I kind of understood why they gave me the warning. They weren't mean about it, but it was very clear that we'll just put you out again. And I didn't want to get put out again like I'd been in the yard. That was terrible.
The how when did your abduction start? I mean, has it been going on all your life, or just?
Yes. Yeah. It's been going on since, well, my first remembered abduction is when I was around 5, 72, 73.
Mm-hmm.
I think stuff probably happened before that, but I don't have real good memory of that. It's more I talked about the ant people and how they were my friends and they wouldn't hurt me, and that kind of thing, but I don't remember
Yeah. Were the
seeing
ant
any.
people like your imaginary friends? Is
Well, I had an imaginary friend too. Her
Yeah.
name was Sally, and she looked real to me. She just looked like a young girl. Um, and yeah, I always had an imaginary friend. Well, until I was about 6.
Okay.
So um, I've often wondered, was that like a spirit, or, you know, she looked very human. She just looked like a teenager.
Well, a
Yeah.
lot of things you're talking about, Natalie, is stuff that I have talked to about other people who have experienced a lot of the same things that you've experienced, and it seems to me like it's always the people who experience UFO and UFO contacts all experience about the same thing, but they just have a hard time remembering. You're unique in the fact that you can remember a lot of this stuff, and so um, and I think it's interesting. I hope it's interesting to other people who are listening to what you're saying.
Um, yeah, I spent the first most of my life ignoring it,
Mm,
or I didn't tell anybody. um, I told my parents about that first thing, but I learned really quickly, don't talk about it. That's I was told over and over again, that's just your imagination. you know that couldn't have happened.
hmm
That didn't happen. That was your imagination, or it must have been a dream. So um, I took that to heart, and I anytime it would come up where stuff was going on, because it will happen in waves. You'll go through a month of crazy stuff and then nothing. you know I would
I
just
know
say, yeah.
I know in the past year you sent me a lot of stuff, a lot of information of stuff that happens to you at that time, and you've drawn pictures of what you've seen,
Yeah.
and I was thought it was very interesting of what's going on. Both you and your son both are experiencing a lot of things that uh, would be freaky to a lot of people, to put it
Yeah.
politely. And because I've talked to people who have had experiences like this, and they a lot of times just don't want to talk about it. And sometimes that's all they can talk about. And
Yeah.
because they can't put it into context of where they are now. Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. It's it's not easy because a lot of times you need to talk about it, and you know, you take the temperature in the room, and it's not usually real open to that, you know. um it took me a long time to just accept that this stuff's actually happening, and I needed to deal with it, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because in the 2000s I was terrified of something, but I couldn't figure out what it was. You know, I had nightmares of being chased just over and over again. uh, I was a grown adult and I was afraid to be alone. um, you know, things like that, like a normal things that wouldn't freak me out would freak me out. It's because I wasn't dealing with, you know, what was going on. I kept pushing it aside and saying no, no. um, but it's gotten easier once I was able to, you know, put into words what was going on, and and I don't want to be a victim of it. You know, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
All right. That's what, you know, I figured out with us. It's going to happen. So we might as well get our minds around it and try and just deal with it, um, so it doesn't cause an issue, you know. Um, at first, I told my son that stuff doesn't exist. That's your imagination. And, you know, then I came to terms with it, kind of had no choice. And now, you know, thank goodness I got over that. And he's at a much different place than I am with it. You know, I still have
Mhm.
issues because I spent half my life not dealing with it. So even though I remember now, you know, it's not easy.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Well,
not easy.
people I've talked to and things that I've read indicate that once you've been tagged to be a part of their research for whatever reason, they can find you no matter where you are. Some clients that I've had, you know, when I've asked them about the alien abductions, for instance, I had a client this past week who had she wanted to know about alien abductions and all that. She said she never experienced one. Well, come to find out that she had, and I asked about implants and said no, she doesn't have any implants. I said, well, how do they find you? Well, they find you through the vibrations. Everybody has a
Mm,
certain vibration, and it really shocked me, you know, when she said that because I always thought the implants were for locating like tracking devices and all that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I asked her subconscious. Says, "Well, do you talk to the aliens a lot?" She says, "No." I said, "Well, they talk to you a lot." I said, "Oh yeah, all the time." So we don't know what they're saying, you know, and you hear these high pitched noises in your ears. I don't know if you hear them or not, but people hear them a lot. And I was always told that they were downloading some information into us, and I don't know that that's true or not. I don't know. But I just find it very interesting because um, you know the conversations that we have among our group, you know, people are always trying to figure out what's going on and how to deal with it. And I think for the most part, everybody's dealing with it pretty well. Uh, Nobody's freaked out. We've had a few people come that were kind of freaked out and because they didn't know how to deal with it, and they had family members that were involved in it too, and they didn't know how to, you know, like their sons or daughters, little children that were involved, and of course you were involved when you were about 5 years old, and you know if your mom or dad had known what was going on, that probably would have freaked them out too, and but they can't stop it.
Right. Yeah, that's the hardest part is, you know, um, knowing that they're coming anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, sometimes children deal better than adults do
Well,
with that kind of thing. But to know that your child is in any way out of your out from under your wing and out there with creatures,
who
it's
knows?
not.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to wrap your mind around and to be okay. Uh, you know it's going to happen. And I think the best thing you can do is just talk to your children about it. Let them tell you what's going on and don't tell them. It's just your imagination. Listen to them, you know?
Yeah. And listen to them not only about the imaginative friends, but a lot of times young children will turn to their parents and say, I remember when I used to change your diapers, or I used to do this
Yeah,
for you. And it freaks the parent out because, you know, their their parent may have died years ago. And now is that a reincarnated uh, parent that's now their child? And we don't know. And but we do know that uh, whatever seeds you plant one place, you will reap something another time. And scriptures tell us that.
yeah.
And and in our society, we don't mention a whole lot about reincarnation. When I was growing up, that was something that happened in the East, and it didn't happen here. And
Yeah.
and so it was never taught. And so I've had to do a lot of research about that too. So anyway,
No,
uh,
I think it's fascinating. Um, Anytime any kind of subject like that came up, that was always off the table. We
yeah.
weren't allowed to even talk about it.
But there's so many things that a child can tell you. I remember uh, my sister and my grandmother, my mom, my aunt, and my niece were all driving through Galveston one day, and my niece was just a small child, probably about 4 years old or something, 5 years old. And as they were driving through Galveston, she went freaky and said, I live down that road, and my children need me. I live down that road.
Oh my goodness.
And uh, nobody paid any attention to what um, my niece was saying. My sister remembered it and she talked about it, but my aunt, my mom, my grandmother, nobody paid any attention to what that child was saying. And she went freaking just start crying and screaming. She needed to go feed her children. And
Oh
so
my
what
goodness.
what does that mean? Who was it down there in that road? So I don't know.
Wow. Yeah. How do you handle that?
Yeah. And so, and I tell people, I say, just, listen to your children because your children will tell you things because as an adult, we become accustomed to this world. But as a child, they haven't become accustomed to it yet. And they see and hear things that we can't, you know what
It's
I'm
true.
talking about? And
Absolutely.
uh, I don't know. And and I'm late in age and to start paying attention to stuff like this because I missed out on a whole lot of stuff that had I known about it then, would have given me
Mm.
a whole different view of life.
I often wonder if I'd been encouraged to just it's okay to talk about, that maybe I would have handled things a little bit better. It
Mhm.
wouldn't have just freaked me out, and it wouldn't have built up to such a degree that I had to deal with it. If it just been okay, that it might be real.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
Uh, well, Natalie, I think we're going to wrap it up now, and I would like to do this again later, and
Yeah.
so um, we're going to stop it. And I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Carl.
You're welcome.